In this lesson, we're going to get the geometry for our shirt. Alright, so we're just about finished with the body, and the last thing that we need to do is separate out the geometry for the shirt itself. So taking a look at our reference image, you can see that the character is wearing kind of a tank top type of shirt, and we need to get that geometry out. Now we're going to talk about how to reuse the geometry that we already have, and then we're also going to talk about geometry optimization. So to get started with this, let's go ahead and select the body, and we're going to go down to Editable Poly. And let's go to Polygon Mode, and let's make sure that we select this ring that's around the arm here. So hold down Shift and select that next polygon. That will select that ring, and then we can go around the rest of the body and start to choose out the polygons we want for the shirt. Now you'll notice that I'm leaving some of those out, and we're going to talk about how to get the exact shape that we want here in just a few moments. So let me go ahead and select these as well, and then I'm going to select everything else in the body. Okay, so all of these polygons here, and then also across the back up to this point here. So that should give us plenty to work with, and now we want to separate this out. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to duplicate this. I'm just going to detach this element. So to do this, let's go ahead and use detach, and let's call this shirt. And now we've separated that out into its own object. Now you'll notice that it's separated out from the rest of the body. And what we'll have to do is we'll have to create geometry that's going to cover up the seams that is created from the separation itself. So to get started with this, the first thing that I want to do is go ahead and apply a symmetry modifier to this object. So let's just select one of the lines in the center, and we'll apply symmetry. Let's hit flip, and then we'll also apply a turbo smooth. Turn on isoline display, and if you need to, you can bump that up to 2 iterations just to make sure that that's nice and smooth there. Now looking at this, everything looks great up to this point. Just a couple of things that we might want to change up. We might want to change up the shape a little bit, so you can come in and you can start to target weld a little bit on the shirt to get the exact form and shape that you want. So to do something like that, we'll go ahead and we'll select the polygons that we don't necessarily want in this, and we'll hit delete. And then I can come in and start to target weld these points to make sure that it's one nice loop here. So to do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click, and I'm going to target weld this vertex to here, and then we'll take the rest of this and we'll start to form it a little bit better. Now you'll notice that we're losing some of that geometry, so we'll have to be careful on making sure that we get that back. So we can bring that down. You got this nice looping shape here, and if we take a look at it under our turbo smooth, you'll see that it creates a really nice looking shape. Okay. Now remember, on the body itself, that's missing, and now we need to come in and optimize this model so that way we actually have geometry for the body itself that's underneath the shirt. So let's select the shirt, and I'm going to add another another modifier, and I'm going to call this shell. Now what shell is going to do is it's going to add some thickness all the way through the object, and it creates some really nice thickness to make that look like it's raised, and we can control it by using the inner and outer amounts here. Now one thing that I don't like about this is it adds a lot of segments on this side. It doesn't match up with everything else that we have. So the order for our shell is wrong. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and take the shell modifier. I'm going to bring that down below my symmetry, or above my symmetry here. Let's go ahead and right click on symmetry, and let's say collapse 2, and that's going to bring everything that's below up into that. We'll hit hold yes, and you'll see that we have editable poly, which is our object, so we no longer have that symmetry. We're going to shell that to give it some thickness, and then we'll add our turbo smooth to smooth it out. So let's turn off our turbo smooth really quickly, and let's just take a look at our geometry and what we have here. We can come in and we can add a little bit more thickness going to our shell modifier, so we can make that larger or thinner, whichever we prefer. Let's take a look at our turbo smooth applied and just see if we can get the thickness that we want. And this is thin enough. I think that it gives us plenty to work with on the edges, so I'm pretty happy with that. So we'll go to around 0.7 just to round that off. Now that we have our shell, there's one other thing that I want to do. I want to take care of the polygons that are going to be on the inside of this shirt. That's just wasteful. If they're not going to be rendered at all, there's no reason to have those, and that's going to make it more difficult on the person who's going to rig this model. So with the shell modifier, we have a great little option here that we can actually select all of the faces that are on the inside. So if I check this, select interfaces, you'll see that everything has been selected. Now with those selected, I'm going to go down to Editable Poly. And then inside of Editable Poly, I'm going to go to Polygon Mode. Now you'll notice that it doesn't keep those selections. So what's happening? Well, let's turn off Polygon Mode, and let's select our shell. And then I'm going to right-click on that and say Collapse To. We'll hold yes. And now if we go to our Editable Mesh, which has been converted over, we have those polygons selected. Let's go ahead and right-click on that and convert it to an Editable Poly to bring that back. But before we do that, actually, let's remove that Turbo Smooth. So right-click, delete that. Right-click, convert to Editable Poly. Let's go to Polygon Mode. There we go. And then we'll just hit delete. Now we can just reapply that Turbo Smooth, and now we've got our geometry back. Okay. Take that up to 2. We've still got that smoothness, and we've gotten rid of some of those wasteful polygons on the inside. Now, we have one more issue, and that's making sure that we have 0 seams around the arms and things like that. So we want to make sure that we get rid of this hole. So to do that, I'm going to go to Edge Mode. Okay, and we're going to select these edges. We're going to go to our left view, and I'm going to hold down Shift, and let's hit F3 so we can see that. I'm going to hold down Shift, and I'm going to drag that out, and I'm going to make 1 segment, and then 2 segments. And we're going to bring it down below that shirt there. If I hit F3, you'll see that that has been brought underneath the shirt, so we're hiding that seam. If I go to Turbo Smooth, everything has been smoothed over. Now, one final thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that we take these vertices that are on the outside of the shirt and just push those underneath, and just make sure that that is hidden. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. As a matter of fact, this might make things a little bit easier on the rigging artist. Okay, so whenever we start coming in and actually skinning the character, which is just a process of assigning vertices to bones and assigning weight to those vertices and how much influence they have, or how much influence the bones have over those vertices, it's going to make things a little bit easier. Okay. So we're coming in, we're just making sure that this is covered. Now on the body itself, we still have that symmetry modifier, so we only have to work on one side. And we're just barely pushing these vertices in. Some of these we may not have to mess with quite as much, but we do want to make sure that they are being pushed in. Now I want to take this back into the Y, excuse me, on that one, and push that one in the Y, just to make sure that we don't have any holes whenever all of the Turbo Smooth is applied to an object. So all that looks great. Let's go along the back of the neck. That looks good. Might take that one down in the Z just a little bit. Let me make sure that I have the right one selected. Let's hit F3. I'm looking to select this one right here. Okay. Apply Turbo Smooth. And just take a quick inspection over your object, and I don't see any holes, so that looks great. Now, we might be asking, why would we want to go ahead and separate out that geometry? We could have taken those polygons and we could have extruded those out and just made it all one object. We very well could have done that, but this is going to be much easier whenever we start to model the head. Now, the way that this is going to be easier is because now, instead of taking all of the segments that could be coming down from the head into the neck and trying to terminate those throughout the entire body somewhere, we only have to terminate them out to this object, which is the upper chest and the neck itself. So if we have to add any extra segments, That's just going to be a lot easier. And there's really nothing wrong with having multiple objects on a character. Now, if you were creating characters for video games, then that might be a little bit different. Then you might have to start looking into how the game engine handles models and how it updates those and how it works with those models in memory, because every game engine is going to be a little bit different. We're just taking the stance on how to model characters at a very basic level, and we're not trying to get into restrictions and trying to really make this a cumbersome type of course. We just want to learn the techniques for modeling a character. Alright, so now that we have the body finished and we've got the t-shirt separated out, you can come in and we could start to create some wrinkles and some detail in the shirt. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to take just a short lesson next to show how to do that. So we'll get started with that next.